My son told me, quite coldly, "I have sold your house to pay for a vacation for my wife and me, and you have only one day to pack your things." At that moment, I simply smiled. He did not know that the house, in truth, is not mine in the way he imagines. I am happy that you are following me now, and I hope you will listen to my story until the end, and tell me from which city you are watching me, so I know how far my tale has reached. I never imagined that the autumn of my years would begin with an unexpected betrayal. For over 37 years, I have lived in this large house, the two-story one in the Palm neighborhood. Here I raised my son, Ibrahim, and here I celebrated with his father, Ahmed, many long years of life. Every corner of the house held an etched memory. After Ahmed's death 5 years ago, the house became my safe haven and my burden all at once. It was perhaps too big for one person, but it was filled with a whole lifetime. I was not ready to give it up. Ibrahim was always a source of my pride. He is a successful financial advisor, married to Nora. She is a real estate agent who cares about her appearance excessively. She has an artificial smile that never reaches her eyes. They lived 40 minutes away in a modern residential complex. Our relationship was ordinary, limited to Friday lunches once a month, and birthday calls, the usual routine for children busy with their own lives. But 6 months ago, something changed. It started with small questions from Ibrahim that seemed innocent at first, as he would say, "Mom, haven't you thought about moving to a smaller house? Maintaining this place is expensive. Wouldn't a comfortable apartment be easier for you?" I would laugh and dodge the answer, turning the conversation to his work and life, but the visits increased suddenly. Ibrahim and Nora would show up without an appointment. Nora would examine the rooms with her sharp eyes, as if measuring the spaces for new furniture. She would always comment on the old kitchen, the inefficient heating system, and the amount of fees and taxes I was wasting on this property. I began to feel like I was being watched in my own home, as if I were a museum piece. And Nora would say, in a voice dripping with fake concern, "We are worried about you, Mariam. A woman your age living alone in this big house. What if you fall? What if something bad happens to you?" I was 68 years old, not 90. I still tended to my garden, drove my car, and volunteered at the charity twice a week. But they spoke to me as if I had lost my mind or become helpless. Even the phone calls became more frequent. Ibrahim would call me late at night, in a voice charged with what he called concern, asking me if I had thought about mortgaging the house, updating my will, or if I had appointed a legal proxy to handle my health matters. The questions were more like a financial audit than they were concern. Then came that Tuesday afternoon in October. I was in the garden, tending to the last flowers. It was autumn when I heard the sound of Ibrahim's silver car. He stepped out alone this time, without Nora, and a chill ran through my body when I saw his expression. He wasn't worried. Rather, he looked stern and frighteningly decisive. Without preamble, he said, "Mother, we need to talk." He didn't wait for me to invite him in, but brushed past me into the house. I followed, wiping the dust from my hands, trying to calm my racing heart and wondering what I had done to deserve this tone. He stood in the living room, the very room where I used to rock him as a child, and the words came out of his mouth cold and calculated, as if he had rehearsed them for a long time. "I have sold your house to pay for our vacation. You have one day to pack your things." The world shook around me, and I grabbed the back of Ahmed's old chair to steady myself. I asked him in shock, "What did you say?" He answered as if the matter were perfectly natural and logical. "Noura and I have planned a trip to the Maldives for our 10th wedding anniversary. We deserve it after everything we've been through. The sale will be finalized tomorrow, and the new owners want to move in at the end of the week." I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound came out. How could he have done this? And when? Ibrahim continued speaking, avoiding eye contact. "Don't make this harder than it already is. We found you a luxury nursing home, a single room with all services included. You will be happier and safer. safer again. I looked at my son. I truly looked at him and saw a stranger. When did this happen? When did my little boy, who used to bring me wildflowers, become this cold, materialistic man standing in my house, telling me he had stolen it from beneath my feet? But what Ibrahim didn't know, and would never know in the throes of his greed and arrogance, was that the house was no longer registered in my personal name. I offered a small, calm smile that made him hesitate for a moment, and I said quietly, "So that's how it is." "Very well, I suppose you had better tell me the name of the nursing home you've chosen." After Ibrahim left in his luxury car, leaving me a brochure for the Riyadh nursing home, I sat in Ahmed's chair for exactly 20 minutes, letting the shock wash over me like cold water. My hands were shaking, and my chest was tightening. Did my son really try to sell my home without my permission? Did he stand here and order me to pack my bags as if I were being evicted? His audacity was truly staggering. I forced myself to breathe slowly and think clearly. Panic would not help me now. I needed to understand what Ibrahim had actually done, because he was so confident when he left. I took out my laptop. I do own one, despite my son's naive assumptions about my technical abilities. And I began searching the real estate records. It took me 40 minutes and 3 phone calls until I finally reached an official at the land registry. He was able to access the information. The official said to me, "Ma'am, according to our records, the property on Palm Street is owned to Ahmed's trust fund established in 2021, and you are listed as the sole trustee." I thanked him and hung up with a smile on my lips. Of course, Ahmed and I had created this trust 3 years before his death on our lawyer's advice. The house wasn't in my name, but in the name of the trust, and I was the one in control, while Ibrahim was only the beneficiary after my death. Ibrahim couldn't sell it without my signature or consent, but he tried anyway. Did he forge documents? Did he lie to the buyer? Or was this all a ploy to scare me into signing the house over? I needed to know more and gather evidence. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I called Ibrahim's coworker, Khalil, whom I'd met several times at company events and who always respected me. I asked him honestly, "Khalil, I need a straight answer. Has Ibrahim been acting strangely at work lately? Does he have financial problems?" There was a long silence. Then he said, "Mrs. Mariam, perhaps I shouldn't say this, but Ibrahim took out a huge loan last month. He told the partners it was for a business investment, but there are rumors that he is drowning in debt. Even his biggest client threatened to leave the firm last week." I thanked Khalil and ended the call, feeling deeply bitter. Ibrahim was in real financial trouble, and instead of turning to me or being honest, he decided to steal my home. But why the story about the vacation and the Maldives? I opened my computer again and headed to Noura's Facebook page. It is a public page full of photos of global brands and luxury destinations. I found dozens of posts about their upcoming dream trip and photos of resort bookings. They had been planning this for months in front of their friends and followers. And now they needed the money to make it happen. My money and my house. I sat down, feeling a sense of hardness and strength in my chest. It wasn't just about financial distress. It was about the fake facade and Noura's perfect Instagram life. They decided that my home, my security, and my memories were worth less than their vacation photos. That was when the plan was born in my mind. I won't run, I won't hide, and I won't move into a nursing home while they drink juices on the beach with my stolen money. Instead, I will make them think they have won. I will play the role of the weak, confused old woman they think I am. And while they are busy celebrating, I will gather every piece of evidence against them so they face real consequences. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hoped I would never need. It was Sarah Al-Mansour, the most powerful real estate lawyer and Ahmed's former university classmate. I told her, "Sarah, I need your help. My son just tried to steal my house. Sarah arrived at my home the next morning at exactly 9 a.m. She carried a leather briefcase and had a serious expression on her face. I told her everything, from Ibrahim's repeated questions to Noura's appraisal of the house, right up to the shock of the house listing announcement. Sarah was taking notes with intense focus, and she said he cannot sell the house without your signature as the trustee. And that means either he forged documents or he is pressuring you to sign. Let me make some calls. While Sarah was working, I was making coffee and trying to calm my nerves, wondering what Ibrahim would do when he finds out I haven't left. My phone buzzed with a message from him saying, "Mom, have you started packing? The moving crew will arrive at exactly 3 o'clock this afternoon." I showed the message to Sarah, and she said, "Don't reply yet. Let's see if they really come. And if that happens, I will handle it." At exactly 2:45 p.m., a white moving truck pulled up in front of my house. 2 men got out, checking their paperwork. Sarah stood beside me, recording with her phone, and said, "Let them knock. Don't open the door." They knocked on the door 3 loud times. One of them called out, "Ms. Mariam, we are from the moving company. Your son, Ibrahim, hired us to help with your move." Sarah opened the door with her stern legal expression. She said, "Good afternoon, gentlemen. I am Sarah Al-Mansour, legal counsel for Ms. Mariam. May I see the work order?" Sarah examined the paper. She said with sharp eyes, "This order was submitted by Ibrahim, but he has no legal authority to move anything from this property, which is held in a trust. I suggest you call him to pay for your time, as you will not be moving anything from here today." The workers left in a state of anger. A little later, Ibrahim's car arrived with Noura. He stepped out with a face red with rage, seemingly having received a call from the moving company. Sarah stepped out onto the porch before he could reach the door and said in a loud voice, "Mr. Ibrahim, Ms. Noura. I am Sarah Al-Mansour. I legally represent Ms. Mariam. Any attempt to move property or claim ownership of this house without written consent from Ms. Mariam is considered attempted fraud and elder abuse." Ibrahim turned pale and shouted, "Who the hell are you?" "Mom, what is happening here?" I appeared behind Sarah, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in a long time. I said to him, "Sarah is my lawyer, Ibrahim, and she is here because you tried to sell my house without my permission." Ibrahim replied with a trembling voice, as if losing control, "I was trying to help you. You cannot take care of this place. You are putting yourself in danger." Sarah said coldly, "That is not your decision. Ms. Mariam is of sound mind and is perfectly capable of managing her own affairs, and what you tried to do here is illegal." Noura grabbed Ibrahim's arm, whispering sharply to him, but he angrily shook her off and said to me, "I am your son, and everything you own should be mine. In any case, you are acting selfishly by clinging to this house while we are in need of." Then he stopped suddenly, as if he realized. He was about to reveal what he was hiding. I asked him calmly, "In need of what, Ibrahim? Money? Do you want money for your trip to the Maldives, or to cover that 6-figure loan you took from your job?" His eyes widened in shock, and he asked me how I knew. I replied, "I may be 80, but I haven't lost my mind yet. I am still capable of making calls, researching, and investigating." I stepped toward him, feeling my decades of patience turning into hardness and cruelty, and I said to him, "You tried to steal my home to fund your vacation, and you were ready to make me homeless for a beach resort." He tried to justify it, saying, "Mom, it's not like that. We were going to take care of you, and that nursing home is a lovely place." I interrupted him, saying, "A single room where I lose my independence, my memories, and my entire life, while you and Noura post pictures on Instagram from the Maldives, paid for by the value of my house here." Noura's mask slipped. She said sharply, "Perhaps if you weren't so stubborn and would accept help." We wouldn't have been forced to, but Sarah the lawyer interrupted her, saying, "Forced to what? Committing a crime of elder fraud?" Because that is exactly what happened, Ms. Nora, and I have all the documents now. Ibrahim and Nora stood in my garden walkway. Their plan had collapsed. And I saw the fear in my son's eyes, fear of the consequences, and of being exposed, and I felt satisfied. Let him taste the fear I lived through for the last 24 hours. Sarah's plan was simple and comprehensive, documenting everything, filing a formal complaint with the authorities, and obtaining a court order preventing Ibrahim from claiming anything related to my property. But we needed hard evidence of the attempted fraud. I suddenly remembered that I was a co-signer for Ibrahim on his first credit card back in his university days, and it seems he forgot to close that account. As a guarantor, I had the legal right to view the statements. 3 days later, the documents arrived, and my dining table turned into an operations room filled with bank statements, credit card bills, and loan applications. The picture was terrifying. Ibrahim and Nora were drowning in debt due to designer clothes, luxury cars, and that modern house, and the massive loan was just a desperate attempt to maintain their social image. And there, amidst the bills, I found a payment of $47,000 to the Maldives Dreams Company for luxury trips. He had already paid for the trip with money they didn't have, and he was desperately in need of recouping it from the value of my house. While I was photographing the evidence, the doorbell rang, and I saw Ibrahim's car with another strange car behind it. A man in a formal suit stood next to Ibrahim. Sarah opened the door, and Ibrahim said in a strained voice, "Ms. Sarah, this is my lawyer, Yasser Al-Zarani. We have come to discuss a settlement." I joined them at the door. Ibrahim looked at me with a gaze full of resentment, not regret, as if I were the one in the wrong for defending myself. His young lawyer, who seemed to have taken the case without understanding its dimensions, said, "My client would like to propose a settlement that benefits everyone. He acknowledges a misunderstanding regarding the property transfer, but insists his mother cannot care for the house alone, so he proposes joint ownership where he handles all financial and maintenance decisions, while Ms. Miriam retains the right of residence." I laughed bitterly and said, "So I live here while Ibrahim controls everything. And what will happen when he decides to sell? Anyway, Ibrahim, you tried to kick me out, and you hired movers without my knowledge, and you lied to me for months." The lawyer tried to interrupt me, saying, "Ms. Mariam, my client is concerned about your mental competence." Sarah shouted at him, "Are you saying a woman in full control of her affairs and finances, who volunteers in the community, is incompetent because she wouldn't let her son rob her?" Ibrahim shouted in anger, "No one is robbing anyone. I am your only son. And this house will be mine in the end anyway. I am just trying to help you move to an assisted living facility." I pulled out my phone and showed him a copy of the bank statement and the payment for the Maldives trip, and I said, "I know everything about the trip and the debts, Ibrahim." His face turned completely pale. Nora appeared from behind the lawyer, screaming, "You've been spying on us!" "Digging through our private records," I answered her. "Those are records I have the right to access, and they clearly show why you both need money so desperately." Nora said spitefully, "Mariam, if you loved your son, you would help him. This house is too big for you, and everyone sees that. We are your only family. Are you choosing a strange lawyer over your own son?" Her manipulation was so obvious that I said calmly, "I am choosing myself," which is something I should have done long ago. They left, threatening to file a guardianship case and prove I was mentally unfit. But Sarah reassured me that threatening the elderly in front of witnesses would only make their position worse. I spent the following days in complete peace between my garden and my literary salon, trying to regain my strength. Nora's manipulation attempts began via email, with messages full of false claims and fake tears, claiming that Ibrahim's heart is broken, and that he loves me and worries about me, and that I would be alone in that big house if I fell and no one found me. I was forwarding all those messages to Sarah to document them. Then began the phase of showering me with flowers and phone calls, full of appeals to pity and then anger again. where Ibrahim would say in his voice messages, "Mom, I made a mistake, but I am your son. Doesn't that earn me forgiveness? Please call me." As for Noura, she was more aggressive, accusing me of letting the lawyer manipulate me to take my money. I felt a little lonely, as Ibrahim was my only son, and the house felt empty after our old habits stopped, but my friends in the literary salon were my support. When I told them everything, I found support from them I hadn't expected. For each one of them had a similar story about the manipulation of children or relatives. Layla, the retired nurse, helped me with her daily visits and homemade soup. And Nadia, whose husband was a police officer, gave me security and documentation advice. And Saada, who worked in social services, connected me to a support group for seniors facing financial exploitation. In that group, I realized I wasn't crazy or overreacting, but rather facing a known pattern of abuse. On a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after contact was cut off, they came again. I was in the garden when I saw Ibrahim and Noura walking toward me with a strange woman who looked dignified. Ibrahim said in a calm, artificial voice, "Mom, we just want to talk, please listen to us." The woman introduced herself as Dr. Fatima, a geriatric specialist, and Ibrahim said he brought her to evaluate my living situation. I told her calmly, I did not consent to any evaluation. The doctor said softly, "Of course, but many elderly people don't realize they need help. Forgetting bills, neglecting the house, and isolating yourself from family are all concerning signs." I looked at Ibrahim and said, "I pay my bills on time, and my house is in perfect condition. I am not isolated. I am surrounded by people who truly care about me." Noura shouted, "We are worried about you, Mariam. We brought the doctor at our own expense." I asked Ibrahim sharply, "Are you worried about me, or about the Maldives trip that was canceled?" Ibrahim tightened his jaw and said, "Mom, we canceled the trip. Don't you realize that our family is more important than any vacation?" For a moment, I almost believed him. I almost saw the little boy who cried when his goldfish died. But I caught the look of resentment in Noura's eyes, and I knew it was a lie. I said to him, "Show me the cancellation confirmation. Show me the email or the refund." His face flushed with anger, and he said, "After all this, you still don't trust us?" I replied, "You tried to sell my house and kick me out, and you lied to me repeatedly. Why should I?" The doctor intervened, saying, "Ms. Mariam, this kind of paranoia and suspicion is very common in cases of cognitive decline. Not trusting your family and thinking they are conspiring against you are clear warning signs." The manipulation was so perfect that I felt a chill run down my spine. This woman was a real doctor, giving a diagnosis based on fabricated symptoms. If I weren't careful, he would use this against me in court. I told her, "I am not suffering from cognitive decline. I am suffering from my son trying to exploit me financially. Would you like to see the evidence? The moving company's work order? The bank statements showing the paid trip?" The doctor's smile faded, and Noura shouted, "You've turned him against us with your lawyers and accusations." Ibrahim screamed, losing his temper completely. "We made one mistake, Mom. People make mistakes. But instead of forgiving us, you act like we're monsters. We need help. We are drowning in debt. And you are sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars in this house, while your only son is drowning." The real Ibrahim had finally emerged. I asked him, "So it's my fault that you live beyond your means? My fault that you paid for a trip you couldn't afford?" Noura screamed, "Parents are supposed to help their children. That's what parents do. They sacrifice and give. But you're just a selfish old woman clinging to a house you don't need." The venom in her voice was terrifying. But I stood firm, and I said to them coldly, "Get off my property, all of you now." Dr. Fatima looked at us regretfully, as if she regretted her involvement. And they began to withdraw. They left, making threats against me. Ibrahim said in a cold, harsh voice, "We're leaving, but Mom, you need to understand one thing. We tried to do this the nice way. We tried to help you, take care of you, and be patient with your stubbornness, but you chose your path. You preferred lawyers and strangers over your own family. Nora added, her eyes glistening with angry tears. You will regret it when you are completely alone and in need of help, and you find no one by your side. You will remember this moment. You will remember that we tried. They turned and walked away, and Dr. Fatima followed them, clearly feeling uncomfortable. I watched them drive away. My hands were trembling, not from fear but from anger. I entered my house, and I called Sarah immediately. I told her that they brought a doctor to declare me mentally incompetent, but I stood my ground. I did not let them in, and I spoke to them only when necessary. Sarah said encouragingly, You did very well, Miriam. They are becoming desperate, and that means we are winning. But it also means they might do something reckless. I want you to consider installing surveillance cameras. I replied, feeling how prepared I was, that I had already done it. My friend Layla's son-in-law installed them for me last week, and I have a complete recording of everything that happened in the garden. Sarah laughed in total agreement and said, You will be fine, Mariam. In fact, you will be in the best of shape. After I hung up the phone, I sat in Ahmed's chair, and I let myself feel everything. The fear, the anger, and the sadness, because my son had become someone I barely recognize. But beneath it all, there was a determination stronger than anything else. They tried to break me, but instead they made me stronger. The court summons came 6 weeks later, where Ibrahim filed for emergency guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent and unable to care for myself. The hearing was set for Tuesday, the 7th of October, in court. Sarah prepared our defense with military precision. We had bank records proving that I manage my finances perfectly, and medical records showing my excellent cognitive functions, and testimonials from my friends in the literary salon and from the library where I volunteer, in addition to the camera recordings of Ibrahim's confrontations and documents from the moving company. Sarah told me the night before the hearing, They have nothing but allegations and Dr. Fatima's superficial observations, which any judge will see through. But Mariam, be prepared. For Ibrahim will say terrible things, and Nora will cry. They will try to portray you as a tragic figure who doesn't realize her declining state. I told her. I know, and I was truly ready. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined, dimly lit with a formal atmosphere. Ibrahim and Nura sat with their lawyer, Yasser al-Zahrani, who seemed better prepared this time, and they brought Dr. Fatima and 2 other people I don't know as witnesses. Judge Layla entered, a woman in her 50s with piercing eyes. She examined the request in silence, then said, Mr. Yasser, this is a request for guardianship, emergency guardianship over Mrs. Mariam, 68 years old, submitted by her son, Ibrahim. Please present your case. Lawyer Yasser stood up and said with artificial emotion, Your Honor, my client is seeking guardianship over his mother, driven by deep concern for her safety. Mrs. Mariam lives alone in a large house. She is no longer able to maintain it, and she has begun to suffer from increasing paranoia. She accuses her family members of fraud and refuses help, and isolates herself from her loved ones. Dr. Fatima will testify to the signs of cognitive decline, she observed. The doctor was called first and portrayed our confrontation in the garden and my logical questions as paranoid complaints, and my defense of my home as an inability to accept help. Then came the false witnesses. Ibrahim's colleague, who claimed Ibrahim is loyal to his mother and very worried about her, and Nora's sister, who claimed I had become hostile and irrational recently. Finally, Ibrahim stood to give his testimony. His performance was flawless, as he spoke in a low and emotional voice, portraying himself as a devoted son, watching over his beloved mother's decline, and he described the house as too big for her, and that she no longer leaves it, and is almost completely isolated. His lawyer asked him about the moving company incident. Ibrahim said, his voice trembling slightly, I made a mistake. I was worried about her safety, and I thought if I showed her how much easier life would be in a smaller place, she would be convinced. I shouldn't have acted without her consent. But it came from pure love and concern for her. He didn't mention the Maldives. He didn't mention his debts. He didn't mention his true motives. Then it was Sarah's turn, and she asked him, Mr. Ibrahim, you testified that you acted out of fear for your mother's safety, didn't you? He replied, yes. She continued, and yet you hired movers without telling her. Isn't that right? He said, as I said, it was a mistake. Sarah said sharply, a mistake that coincided with a $47,000 payment for a luxury resort in the Maldives? Silence filled the courtroom, and Ibrahim's face turned pale. He stammered, we had planned a trip, but… Sarah interrupted, a trip you are still planning, aren't you? Your lawyer claimed you canceled it, but in reality, you only postponed the date, isn't that true? Sarah presented the evidence. Screenshots of Nora's social media posts from just 2 weeks ago, showing the countdown to their postponed trip, booking confirmation messages, and credit card payment schedules. Sarah said to the judge, Your Honor, this is not about concern for Ms. Mariam. It is about financial desperation. Mr. Ibrahim is drowning in debt, and he tried to access the value of his mother's home to fund his lifestyle. Then Sarah called me to the stand. I spoke clearly and calmly about my daily routine, my volunteer work, my literary salon, my financial management, my garden, and my friendships. I presented my medical records confirming my excellent health, and my bank records showing all bills paid on time. Sarah asked me, Ms. Mariam, why do you think your son filed for guardianship? I looked directly at Ibrahim and his pale, trapped face and said, because I refused to let him steal my house to pay for his vacation, because I did not submit to his threat to give up my independence, and because I stood up for myself. The judge called for a recess. After 20 minutes, she returned with her decision and said in a firm voice, I have reviewed all the evidence, and I find no basis for this request. Ms. Mariam is fully competent, financially stable, and lives independently without issues. And it appears this is exactly what Ms. Sarah suggested, an attempt to access assets under the guise of concern. She looked at Ibrahim with disgust and said, Mr. Ibrahim, filing malicious guardianship petitions wastes court resources and is considered a form of elder abuse. I deny your request and order you to pay all of Ms. Mariam's legal fees. In addition to that, I will refer this case to Adult Protective Services to investigate the possibility of financial exploitation. Ibrahim's face collapsed, and Nora burst into tears, the tears of defeat. This time, the session was adjourned, and I walked out of the courtroom with my head held high, Sarah by my side, and my freedom and dignity intact. I had won. Adult Protective Services moved quickly, and within 2 weeks the assigned officer called me and said, Ms. Mariam, what your son tried to do constitutes financial exploitation and attempted fraud, and we are opening a formal case. You should also know that his employer has been notified, as this is standard procedure in cases involving financial misconduct by financial professionals. I did not expect that. But when someone in a position of financial trust displays this kind of behavior toward their own family members, then the employer must know, because it reflects on their integrity and decision-making ability. The dominoes began to fall faster than I expected. His company suspended him, pending an investigation. And when the partners discovered he had taken a loan under false pretenses and tried to defraud his mother, they made a quick decision to fire him immediately, without severance pay and without any professional recommendations. Then came the turn of Nora's real estate license, as the state board investigated whether she was involved in an illegal real estate transaction. Although they did not find enough evidence to revoke her license, the real estate office she worked for quietly let her go, because in real estate, reputation is everything. Rumors about the attempted fraud spread quickly. As for the Maldives trip, which had been postponed twice, it was canceled for good, not by choice, but due to a lack of money. The resort refused to refund the amount, citing their cancellation policy. The knockout blow came from the mortgage company for Ibrahim's house, as he had fallen 60 days behind on payments. It seems he had been using credit cards to pay the mortgage, and everything collapsed. The bank began foreclosure proceedings on their modern home. I should have felt satisfied, but instead I felt a complex mix of a mother's grief for the son I had lost and relief because I had saved myself. 3 months after the court date, I found a letter in my mailbox in Ibrahim's handwriting saying, "Mom, we have lost everything. The house, our jobs, our friends, and our reputation. Everyone looks at us like criminals, and Nora's family won't speak to us. We are living in a rented apartment and barely getting by. I know you think I deserve this, and maybe I do, but I want you to understand that I never meant to hurt you. I was desperate and overwhelmed, and I made terrible decisions. I am not asking for forgiveness or money. I just want you to know that I am sorry." I read it twice. Then I put it with the rest of the documents. I called Sarah that evening, and she said, "Miriam, I was contacted by Ibrahim's lawyer. They want a settlement. Ibrahim will sign a waiver of any future claims to your property, will not contest your will, and will agree that visits be supervised only in exchange for you not filing further lawsuits." I asked her, "What other lawsuits?" She replied, "You could sue him for psychological damages, compensation, and attempted fraud. And you would likely win." I thought about it for only 3 seconds, and I said, "Prepare the agreement, but I want one condition. Additionally, Ibrahim must complete a financial counseling program and provide proof of it. If he wants to rebuild his life, he must learn to live within his means." Sarah said, "This is very generous of you," but I replied, "It is not generosity, but to ensure this never happens again." The agreement was signed 2 weeks later. Ibrahim and Nora dropped all their demands, and Ibrahim enrolled in the financial program. I updated my will so the house goes to a charity after my death, specifically to an organization that supports seniors facing financial abuse from their families. So Ibrahim will get nothing. He has already proven what he would do with it. The day the papers were finalized, I stood in my garden and felt the weight of 6 months of stress lift off my shoulders. My home is mine. My freedom is mine. My life is mine. Ibrahim bet everything on his plan to control me and lost everything. There will be no reconciliation, no tearful reunion. Some betrayals are too deep, and some trust is completely shattered. He was my son, and I will always love the child he used to be. But the man he has become, that man is a stranger to me, and I am finally free of him. Life after the settlement was sweeter than I imagined. The house Ibrahim tried to steal became my sanctuary in a whole new way. I fought for it and defended it, and now I feel every room is a victory. I did the renovations I had been putting off. New kitchen cabinets, modern bathrooms, and I added a beautiful sunroom where I could read and watch the garden all year. I used my savings, the money I earned and saved over decades, to make the house truly mine again. The literary salon expanded, and we began meeting twice a month. I hosted friends in the dining room, filled with laughter and lively discussions. Layla, Nadia, and Suad became more than friends. They became the real family that truly cares about me without self-interest. My volunteer work at the library increased, and I became the coordinator for a digital literacy program for seniors, teaching them to use computers, browse the internet, and protect themselves from scams, including financial exploitation by relatives. I told my story without using my name at first, then publicly when I felt comfortable. And the sessions filled up quickly. It seems my experience was not as rare as I had hoped. The support group asked me to speak at their annual fundraiser, and I stood on that stage in front of hundreds of faces and told the truth. Your children, your spouses, your relatives do not own you, and they do not own your assets. Love does not mean allowing yourselves to be exploited. You have the right to protect yourselves, even from family, especially from family. The applause lasted for 3 minutes. I started going on social dates again, something I hadn't done since Ahmed died. Nothing serious, just drinking coffee and going to the theater with a retired university professor named Dawood, who made me laugh and never asked me about my money or my house. It was a beautiful feeling to be loved for myself, not for what I have. My garden flourished, and I joined the local horticultural society and won second place for my hydrangeas, and I started giving workshops On weekends, I focused on sustainable gardening. The house Ibrahim thought was too big for me became a hub of activity and joy. Meanwhile, news of Ibrahim and Nora reached me occasionally through mutual acquaintances. They lost their luxury home and moved to a small, rented apartment in a cheap neighborhood. Nora is now working as an administrative assistant, a humiliating step for her career but a necessary one, and Ibrahim finally found a job, though not in finance, as no company would accept him after the investigation. He now works in insurance sales for a meager salary. Nora's social media pages, which were once full of brands and trips, went dark, then returned with a new tone. Quotes about resilience, cryptic posts about lessons learned, and photos carefully cropped to hide their modest circumstances. Nadia told me they had declared bankruptcy. The debts had become unbearable. Ibrahim's marriage was suffering. They were seen in parking lots arguing over which cheap items to buy. The dream life they tried to maintain at all costs had completely collapsed. 6 months after the settlement, I received another message from Ibrahim. It was short and bitter. Mom, I hope you're happy. I hope your house, your lawyers, and your new life are worth destroying your only son. We are barely surviving while you are living in luxury. But I guess this is what you wanted all along. Punishing me for one mistake. I hope it was worth it. I did not reply. There is nothing to say to someone who, despite everything, still sees himself as a victim. Instead, I carried out what I had planned for months. I called my estate lawyer and finalized my plan. Upon my death, the house will be sold. The proceeds will go to funding the Mariam Al-Mansour Foundation to protect the elderly from financial exploitation and to provide legal aid to those facing what I have faced. And Ibrahim will get exactly what he deserves, nothing. I framed the foundation's documents and hung them in my office, next to a picture of Ahmed on our wedding day. And I thought that he would have approved of this. He always used to say that I was stronger than I thought. On the anniversary of Ibrahim's attempt to defraud me, I held a garden party. 50 people attended: friends, volunteers, neighbors, Daoud, Sarah, and her family. We celebrated under the hanging string lights. Laughter filled the place until late. Someone asked me if I ever regretted what happened with Ibrahim. I looked around at my beautiful home, full of people who truly love me. I smiled and said, "Not for a single moment," and I truly meant it. This is my story. My son tried to steal my home, so I fought to take it back. Some think I was too harsh. And that family should forgive everything. Others say I should have been even stricter. What would you have done if your son betrayed you in that way? And how far would you go to protect yourselves? If my story moved you, please leave a comment and share your experiences. Thank you for listening. And always remember that you are never too old to fight for what is rightfully yours.